If the Boston Bruins are in the market for a first-line center this summer, there's a name in Winnipeg that appears to be available who could fit that role long term. The question is, can they afford Pierre-Luc Dubois, and would he want to play in Boston? We're going to talk about all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your day every single day. Free and available wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today is Monday, June 12th. And we're talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois, a very talented center from the Winnipeg Jets who may be available via trade this summer for a number of reasons. We'll get into that here in a moment. First, a quick reminder that you can find the podcast on Twitter, Instagram at Locked NHL Bruins. You can find me, my dad jokes, hockey tweets at Ian C. McLaren, although I am taking a bit of a Twitter break these days. I think this is the longest I've ever gone without tweeting, to be honest. And feeling a little sore this morning. We had a softball tournament over the weekend. Victorious, despite the fact I dropped a couple fly balls in the final game, made a couple plays at third, and we had a walk-off against the first place team, which was pretty fun. But feeling a little sore, and it's dark, rainy this morning, but we press on. Can't shake that I said the date twice already, but hey, let's say it again. Monday, June 12th, let's talk about Pierre-Luc Dubois. Now, Pierre-Luc Dubois is a center. He plays for the Winnipeg Jets, and he's number one on the Daily Faceoff trade target board. And this is what they write over at Daily Faceoff, courtesy of Frank Saravelli. Quote, Dubois has rocketed to the top of the list by virtue of his formal trade request. He's informed the Jets he will not be signing a new contract. The Jets could force him to return next season with a qualifying offer and club-elected arbitration award. Doesn't appear to be the path Winnipeg will travel down. Instead, the most likely outcome is very similar to what the Flames did last year with Matthew Tkachuk. Find a willing party, negotiate an 8-year extension, and then complete the signing trade. With size, youth, and production, Dubois is a power forward in demand. Now, Dubois is a restricted free agent. He is 24 years old, and again, has told the Jets he will not be signing a long-term contract extension and wants to play elsewhere. He made $6 million this past season. His qualifying offer would be $6 million once again. He would play 1 year in Winnipeg under that deal and then become, believe, an unrestricted free agent, or maybe that restricted free agent status would carry over. At any rate, he doesn't want to play in Winnipeg. He's going to be traded. He's not going to re-sign with the Winnipeg Jets. Now, Pierre-Luc Dubois was the third overall pick back in 2016. It went Austin Matthews, Patrick Laine, Pierre-Luc Dubois. It was a bit of a surprise because the Columbus Blue Jackets had the third overall pick. Finnish general manager Jesse Puljujärvi was expected to go third overall to the Blue Jackets as a Finn. However, they went ahead and selected Dubois. Dubois, of course, was later traded to the Winnipeg Jets in a package that included Laine, who went second overall. Just looking at this draft, unbelievable that you had Jesse Puljujarvi, Olli Juolevi selected ahead of Matthew Tkachuk, who went sixth overall to the Calgary Flames. What a stroke of luck for the Flames, of course. They missed out on, or they don't have Tkachuk long term, but still. Also, crazy that Juolevi, a defenseman, was taken fifth overall, and the Bruins got Charlie McAvoy 14th, following Jake Bean, who went to the Carolina Hurricanes, who's now in Columbus. Anyways, we're talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois. Third overall in 2016. He's had a pretty decent career so far. He's appeared in 434 games between the Blue Jackets and the Winnipeg Jets. 302 career points. He had his best season in 2022-23, 73 games, 27 goals, 36 assists for 63 total points. And that was a point per game average of 0.86. He's also appeared in a bunch of playoff games between the Jets and the Blue Jackets. Has 26 points in 38 career playoff games, which is pretty good. He, of course, was a member of the Blue Jackets team that lost to the Bruins in 2019. He also played a big part in them beating the Toronto Maple Leafs in 2020. Just a pretty good overall forward for both the Jets and the Blue Jackets so far. He hasn't really, let's say, lived up to the billing. I should add, he also played in 2019 for the Blue Jackets, 5 points in 10 games during that run, again, which they beat the Lightning in the first round, then lost to the Bruins. His best playoff was in 2020 when they beat the Maple Leafs and then went on to lose to the Lightning in the opening round, Lightning avenging that 2019 loss, beating the Blue Jackets, but he had 10 points in 10 games during that playoff run. He's a pretty good possession player. He had a 59.6 shot attempt differential this season with the Winnipeg Jets, and by all accounts could fill that first line center role for the Boston Bruins. So the reason he's available is because he's unwilling to sign a long-term contract extension with Winnipeg. The question is, should the Bruins pursue him? Can they pursue him? Do they have what it takes to pursue him? And would he want to play long-term in Boston? We're going to discuss that here in a moment. But first, a quick word about today's first sponsor, our friends over at Athletic Greens. Now, Athletic Greens has everything you need to start your day right. One delicious scoop of AG1, you can absorb 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. It's a special blend of ingredients that supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging. Costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than a cold brew habit, which I can't deny that I have. It's cheaper than getting all your different supplements yourself, and you're investing in an all-in-one nutritional insurance. Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. Just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. athleticgreens.com/NHL network to get a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your day every single day. Everydayers can expect continued coverage of the Boston Bruins. We're waiting on announcements from Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci about their futures. Stanley Cup could be decided as early as this week, and there will be buyout windows. Mitchell Miller's gone finally, and decisions to be made on various players. Get it all here on Locked On Boston Bruins. Today we're talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois and whether the Bruins should pursue him on the open market. Not on the open market, on the trade market. The quick answer is, why not? Boston could be without both Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci, and they're going to try to rely on Pavel Zacha and Charlie Coyle as their top two centers. We saw that in the playoffs. It could work. There are some upsides there between Zacha and Coyle. But ideally, you'd want to build around someone who's a bit younger, someone with higher upside. And in my opinion, Charlie Coyle is probably best suited as your third line center. If you could have Dubois, Zacha, Coyle down the middle, then, you could be cooking there and not experiencing a huge drop-off when it comes to production. Again, Dubois had 63 points in 73 games this season, 27 goals, 36 assists. That is production on par with what you're going to get from Bergeron, or what you've gotten from Bergeron and Krejci, and there's still some upside in Dubois. There's another level of his game to be met. Match him up with Brad Marchand or David Pastrnak. You could get, more near a point per game average for Dubois. He's physical. He really brings a Bruins style of play to the ice as well. He's had 100 penalty minutes in the past. He hits. He had 71 hits for the Jets this season. That's down from 112 a couple years ago. He was up in the 115, 127 as a rookie with the Blue Jackets. He ranked 8th in Calder voting that season as well. He blocked shots. Has never finished above 50% in the faceoff dot. That's an area that he could work on. But even if Bergeron comes back, how perfect would it be to have Dubois in the mix? They're both from Quebec. They have common backgrounds coming out of the QMJHL. Ideally, you bring Bergeron back for a season or two. He mentors Dubois, and then Dubois takes the mantle as the Bruins' top line center for the foreseeable future, for the next 8 seasons. I think it's very much worth pursuing. The Bruins have those holes down the middle, and Dubois, you're not likely going to have the opportunity to add a player of his caliber at his age anytime soon. You can try to find a center via free agency or via the draft. The draft will take a ton of time to develop. You're not going to get a guy who was drafted 3rd overall, although Zacha was drafted top 10. But still, the opportunity to add a player like Pierre-Luc Dubois doesn't come around very often, and it's it would be prudent for Don Sweeney to at least have discussions with the Winnipeg Jets as to what it might take to acquire him. Now, do the Bruins have the assets? And would Dubois want to sign with the Boston Bruins long term? Those are huge questions. But the reality is, for them to remain competitive, they likely need to add depth down the middle. They have that internally, that depth down the middle in the form of Zacha and Coyle. The best case would be adding someone above them on the depth chart. And although Dubois hasn't really reached his peak or his zenith, he's still one of the top young centers around the NHL who really does fit the mold of a Boston Bruins player. And I mean, you're not going to find someone at his age with his ceiling that can fill that role very often. There are other centers who could be on the market. Mark Scheifele in Winnipeg is another guy who's on the trade board. He's number 4. He has one more season at $6.13 million AAV. He's already 30, however. Questions about whether he can play first-line center. There's Evgeny Kuznetsov. He's got 2 more seasons at $7.8 million. Kevin Hayes potentially available. It'd be pretty cool to have him come over to Boston. But again, the question is whether the Bruins have the cap space, the assets to get a guy like Dubois, and whether or not he would want to play for them. And we'll talk about that here coming up after the break. But first, a word from our other sponsor today, our friends over at eBay Motors. Now, eBay Motors is the best place to go to get the right fit for your vehicle parts. For parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check. They have a guaranteed fit that with that green check, you know the part will fit or your money back. With over 122 million parts to choose from, it'll be back on the road in no time. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Now, the guaranteed fit is available only to U.S. customers. Eligible items apply, and there are some exclusions as well. But just look for the green check, guaranteed fit, or your money back at ebaymotors.com. 122 million parts to choose from for your vehicle. All right, so the question is, can the Bruins make it work to acquire Pierre-Luc Dubois, and does he want to play in Boston? The reality is it's going to be very difficult for the Bruins to make a play for Pierre-Luc Dubois because they have very limited draft capital, and their prospect pool is pretty thin as well. No first-round pick this year. They have a top 10 protected first-round pick in 2024. No second-round pick in each of the next 3 years. So if Winnipeg's looking for a first-round pick in return, the Bruins aren't going to be able to accommodate that. If they want a center prospect in return, the Bruins would have to part with probably Georgi Merkulov, Brett Harrison, or Matt Poitras, maybe John Beecher, but I don't know if that's really going to tip the scales. And they would probably have to float Mason Lohrei as well. Basically, putting on the table their top prospects. And still, that might not get it done. They could also perhaps float Taylor Hall, Trent Frederick. Perhaps they could put in play. The reality in Winnipeg as well is that Connor Hellebuck is also reportedly not interested in signing a contract extension. So this is where Boston might be able to have the upper hand because they have 2 goaltenders that they could float in a package for Dubois. You take their top center, but you also give them back a goalie, and perhaps they use Hellebuck to trade for a center there. Linus Ullmark under contract for 2 more years at $5 million. Not on the same level as Hellebuck, even though he's going to win the Vezina, but body of work not as elite as Hellebuck, who's been one of the best goalies over the entirety of his career. Or if you want to get really creative, you put Jeremy Swayman in a deal for Pierre-Luc Dubois. I would think the Bruins would be reluctant to do that. You would ideally want to get the top line center to go with an elite defenseman in Charlie McAvoy and an elite young goalie in Jeremy Swayman. Those are 3 pretty significant building blocks to go along with an elite winger in David Pastrnak. If they could have a core of Dubois, Pastrnak, McAvoy, and Swayman, you could be cooking there as they look to a future beyond Bergeron and Krejci. Again, it would cost you Lysell, perhaps Lohrei, maybe one of Merkulov, Harrison, or Poitras. You'd basically be decimating your prospect pipeline and putting everything in the basket for the next couple of years. Again, might not have a first-round pick for a couple more seasons. And so it would take a lot to replenish your prospect pool, but you would have a pretty solid foundation at the NHL level to build around for the next couple of seasons. Now, can they do it cap-wise? Dubois is reportedly looking for a long-term deal that will pay him upwards of $9 million per season. So again, that's going to be a huge stumbling block for the Boston Bruins. They'd have to clear a ton of space to make that work. And ultimately, the kicker could be that Pierre-Luc Dubois is a native of near Montreal. And the belief is that he wants to play for the Montreal Canadiens. So that could be the stop sign right there. The Bruins simply don't play in Montreal. That's where he wants to be. Now, could Patrice Bergeron talk him into coming over if they can play together for 1 or 2 seasons and he can learn from one of the best ever to play the game? That could be the tipping point. However, again, the Bruins don't really have the assets to pull it off. They don't have the cap space. They would have to get really creative in terms of making that space and also putting together a package that's tantalizing enough for the Jets to make that move. The Jets could very well just decide to sign the qualifying offer and make a deal closer to the trade deadline. But they probably want to get this rebuilding going on quicker than later. Scheifele, Blake Wheeler could be moved. Connor Hellebuck, Dubois, they're really starting over in Winnipeg, it seems, and want to get this done this offseason. The Bruins without first-round picks, without high-end prospects, and the fact that Dubois apparently wants to play in Montreal could all be playing against the Bruins here, but still it is worth discussing with the Jets whether or not it could be a possibility. All right, that is it for today's episode, my friends. I hope you all had a fantastic weekend. Hope you're taking care of yourselves, taking care of each other, and we'll talk to you again here tomorrow on a fresh episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.